Hi, folks. Nick Tuckert here with the Historical Fencing Guild. Before we get into it, I've got to pay some bills. So first and foremost, we need to put, and they just scrolled by, so it'll be a bit. We have to shout out to my amazing Patreon patrons. You guys are how I can afford things like Brasso. Why do I have Brasso? We'll get into that in just a moment. We're going to do first step in some of the maintenance. I don't have the exact leather I want to use, and I need to rebuild a ricasso, but I can at least polish it up while I talk to you. So, yes, it will be a live stream where I'm polishing my sword. Ooh. Feel free to be impressed. But my amazing Patreon folks allow me to have funds to do things like buy Brasso, buy trainers, buy pieces to keep this organization going. And that's going to be the theme that we're going to be talking about. So, Off in the Woods, Frog G, Ronald Rain, Bladed Thesis, Brian K. Morris, Cindy Kep, Steve Augusta, Don Dulas, and Angelina Vaquera Link. I have something in the works. I figured out how I want to organize the videos that I will be doing as exclusives for the Patreon folks, to the point where they should be set up where they can download them. We haven't done the scheduling yet, but for part of it, I will be borrowing, acquiring, purchasing, black bagging, and otherwise convincing the beautiful and talented Trelena Bachman to lend her support and her assistance, and possibly Amanda Tuckert to run the camera. I'm not sure who's going to run the camera because I'll be in front of it for a change on that kind of drill. But we're going to be covering the simple sword. We're going to be covering our specialties. So we're going to go a walkthrough, book in hand survey of the simple sword. Then we're going to go into our personal takes on things. So I'll be bugging Trey to see if I can't get her to give a demo on her approach to working the buckler. She is a very specialized buckler. And I know you're looking up like a deer in the headlights, but we have discussed this. And when we speak of the simple sword, whoa, that is my sword simply falling. Anyway, the simple sword, the fighting axe, and the simple spear, which are all part of my ongoing series of Western martial arts manuals designed to help you go from having never handled a sword to teaching the art to others. Now, so I've worked and I am trying to secure the library for setting this sort of content up. Hi, Kitty. Now, the other part we're going to do is I have to do some sword maintenance. I've needed to do sword maintenance. I'm at least going to polish it up, and I'm going to clean it. I'll be using one of my favorite cleaners, Brasso, which I got on clearance. So this is an older bottle. It might not be full strength. And then I will be using an arcane and expensive cleaning device. That being one of my son's socks that he ripped the toe out on. Hello, Ruby. Because I actually find these to be a wonderful element when you're cleaning metals. Now, in honesty, I don't intend to fight with the sword much, if ever again. It needs to be both replaced and retired out of respect for the weapon. But I have such a history with it, I want to do it honor. It has served me, I want to serve it. So I will get it cleaned up, re-inspect it, redo the tape, which will be probably another episode because I have to get my color tape. But I at least want to get this where it looks like it should. This should not be brown. So I'll be working on that while I talk to you. And exactly, they're wonderful. So I will get into the comments. But like I said, the socks are great, especially my son, because my son has size 15 shoes. They are naval vessels. I don't quite know how we arranged that, but we did. I also do like to use a product called gun bluing to treat when I get a new blade, I tend to blue them. It prolongs the life. Yeah, thank you. Well, he's a big boy. He's somewhere around 6'2" now. We have to remeasure him. But for my, hey, I was 5'5" when I graduated. I got 2 inches in college. Whoop. It's exciting. But I'm going to work on that in just a moment. I'll talk a bit about this blade, what it is, what it matters to me. And then I have a discussion that's going to lead into a pre-recorded video that I will be doing, which will be part 1 of the Poor Swordmaster's Guide to, what is it? I have a lovely, let me bring the phrase up. The Poor Swordmaster's Guide, Getting Started When You Are Broke, part 1. And I'm going to do a series of videos, basically, with what I know, if I were building from the ground up, what I would do. Okay? It's a quiet night tonight. Anyway. Normally, I do like shoes that are closed-toed. Socks when they're closed-toed. They've done this. But it'll work. What we have here, actually, I should go through the comments real quick before they get too up, and then I'll start working on the blade, talking about its origin. We get a little touch of, the ship of Theseus, which is funny. My memory is a little off, but that's okay too. So first through the door is owned our happy friend, the chatbot, who seems to be a little more civil, and then Joe Bachman. He's going to teleport in, grab a water, drop his wipes it off, drops it again, says mess it, and so says screw it, we're fine here. Tosses it in the box, tips his hat to the host, dunk, and teleports back out. I was talking to Joe, and I forgot I was talking to Joe. And I may suffer the humiliation of him doing something awesome for me again. But I mentioned, I need to work on on making an intro for this program. But if I do, those guys are going to run amok. And I love them, but, those people do it. And Joe's like, I am those people. You forgot who you're talking to. I'm like, dang, yes. So that may be coming down the pipe. But, and we've got all the greetings for Joe from Thesis. Hey, Thesis. Hello, everyone. I may be in and out. Hi, Foxy. We are going to pause briefly for my not the green room moment. And we are good. And hello, Trelane. I'm glad to hear from you. Hi, Trey. It's almost time. Sorry, I had to take 2 minutes to deal with something that happened. Looks up at deer in headlights. Yes. We've discussed this, but I need to stop discussing and start doing a lot of things. I will also be I don't plan to go late with this video. It is actually Amanda's birthday, and I still have to bake a cake. But there are things I do for her birthday every year, and I intend to keep that up. It's just been a weird one. And if I seem a little more rattled, I know some of you may notice I'm flushed a little bit. That's because this morning, when I was getting ready for the program, I forgot something mildly important. And at 2 o'clock this afternoon, I realized I didn't take my morning meds. So it has been an odd day on certain levels for me, health-wise. I am okay. I will be okay. I just got a little scrambled for a bit there. At times like this, I wish I were closer. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into I wish I was closer and a few other things. Pulls out my old Zelda video game. Rock on. The original Zelda is a masterpiece. Okay. Don't know if you can see it, but if you look above my door beneath the ancient fire extinguisher system that was there, you can see a map of Hyrule. You can also see I know nothing, and a few other things that were gifted to me. I need to get some more of my little tin signs that I accidentally collected up on the wall over there. But that's okay. I love Zelda. Hey all. Hey Kitty, I hope you're having a great day. I really would love to see a video of your rope dart stuff because I do find it fascinating. I have very little talent in such things, but I find it fascinating. And good evening, Ruby. I'm glad you are back amongst us. It is always wonderful. Hello, Kitty. Hello, Ruby. And socks and other fabrics are great for sword cleaning and polishing. Indeed. Big shoes. Yes, he does. My file cabinet came in, so I'm sorting patterns. Rock on. And hello, Houston Dave. How are you? Houston, Texas Dave. Anyway, since you guys are being kind of chill, we're going to talk. I will talk about the origin of this blade. We will talk about weaving into how to get into the SC, or not get into the SCA. Wow, I looked at the blade, but how I got started and how that applies to you guys, what I've learned over the years towards getting things going. And I really want to work on the mindset because I am so tired of the barrier of I can't afford it, so I can't do anything. The all or nothing line. For example, I would very much like to participate in a challenge that was issued to me by our friend Rex Allen Hood. However, to do that, a couple things would need to happen. One, I would have to get an entirely new set of gear because my mask is ancient. I'm just putting the Brasso on here. It will get on my hands. It will cause problems. We'll deal with that. But, and then we just rub it on while we're talking. I would love to be able to participate. He wants me to attend an open and get ranked as a fencer, as a Olympic style fencer. It will have to be epee because epee does not have right of way, which after the years of the kind of fighting I've done, right of way is not a thing that I'm going to pick up. I'm too old a dog to want to. Now, could I? Theoretically, I can. Oh, and thank you for putting the link to my channel, Trelena, so that people who are on others that I can't necessarily see or hear from are available. Ooh, see why I have to work on this? I may have to take this guy apart. I may have to take this guy apart and treat the leather. And yeah, let's see. Let's see. Nick, you're touching the blade bear. I'm going to be touching the blade bear a lot. I just have to see if I have the strength to get the pommel off. If not, I have a very special screwdriver that slides in there, and it is not here. So we will probably be keeping it together. I may disassemble. I may disassemble it later and make sure because there's a hole, and you put the metal stick in the screwdriver, and you turn it, and it lets you pop the pommel. But I also have to redo all the leather, so that'll be a pain. I at least want to get it polished when I'm talking to you. Anyway, there's Dave. Hi, Dave. Bears and blades. I like both. I associate with both. Anyway, there are reasons I have a token breeder stick. Anyway, this particular blade was part of a deal I acquired. And if you're looking to get into what we do, the very most important thing you can do, the absolute most important thing you can do before you really get into your studies, before you try to acquire gear, before you try to do much of anything, what you want to do is grow some manners. You want to be kind, you want to be humble, and you want to be respectful. A little bit. This is just cleaning up and polishing a blade that certainly deserves it. And it's old. The inner guard has some pitting, but it still holds and it will still protect my hand. I do prefer a rapier with a 34-inch blade, which this is. But first thing you gotta go is be nice, and be nice to everybody. Not just, well, be kind at least, but be polite. Because if you're polite, sometimes very nice people will help you out. In the case of this blade particularly, I was at an event, and I believe it was the Tournament of Champions, because it was the event where I was fencing with the Be Kind Rewind. Absolutely. And that's also one of my favorite movies. Thesis, that's the kind of thing you need to bring up when I'm doing an art stream. I'm imagining a big bear with a sword sparring with an octopus, and I could do that, Kitty. That would be a good thing. I need more. I'm being too stingy with my brasso. Anyway. Now, what I'm doing is a first rub through. I'm going to go over it to kind of get the existing stuff off. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to redo it. And I might put some kind of wax, if I have any handy, to coat and protect while it's not in use. Anyhow, I had been borrowing blades and learning how to sword fight for a while. And I'd actually authorized, I believe. Did I authorize with this one? I don't know. I can't remember that part. But I do remember that I authorized with borrowed armor that did not fit me. I had there was a gentleman in the SCA who was a vendor, and he was a vendor of what's the kind of swords many people in programs like mine would mock and ridicule. And Pirates of the Caribbean. Bum bum ba-da-dum bum ba-da-dum bum bum bum. Anyway, if you knew me back then, Pirates of the Caribbean would be very accurate. You can ask Trey or Joey. But, yes, Ruby, by all means, write your question down. I'm happy to respond to it. Because while I'm doing this, though. And that gentleman was a man named Benny. And he ran Benny's Bazaar of the Bazaar. He played a crazy Arab character, and he sold, again, those swords that we kind of often would mock. Now I'll tell you, I prefer to use white socks when I am doing this kind of polishing because it will show the rust off better. And I do need pirate music. Well, maybe I can. I know a guy. I bet I could commission some music from. I need to talk to him anyway because I need to get a soundtrack for some of my gear. Anyway, and I was walking, and I always went by his booth, and I, whenever possible, bought something. You know, a dagger, another little dagger I don't need, because he was one of the few vendors who had things I could afford. And we oh, I'm sorry. Benny was great, and I loved him. But he sold the Pakistani swords. I have a captain's hat. I could go get one. And I loved them. I couldn't afford them. Although my Lord sword, which should be back over there, I've shown a couple times, came from him. But I was talking to him, and I was talking to Mandy, and I'm like, I can't afford the gear. I don't know what I'm going to do to start to do SCA fencing. I mean, I could get the gloves. Armor, Mandy could sew, but I could not, I could not afford the swords. They were way above me, and I couldn't afford a mask. And when I say that, I was back, let's see, I was still living at home. Mandy and I were dating. So that had to be 2000, 2001. I had very little money. As a college student, I had next to nothing. But I saved every chance I could. I'm definitely going to answer your question, Ruby. I see it. I will answer it. It's a delightful question, which I have a great answer for. But I was mentioning, and I'd walked by, and he called me over, and he called me by my SCA name. And he said, "Come here, my friend." I'm like, "Yes." And this mad Arab, he's got his booth of, "I have heard of your troubles." Apparently word had gotten around to South Bend about my situation because they liked me as a fighter. And there was one gentleman working very hard to try to make sure I couldn't authorize. Story for another time. But Benny reaches out. And instead of his usual wares, he reaches under his desk, under the table, and he produces an ancient master's mask, which was a type of fencing mask from, I mean, this was a very, very old 60s or 70s or earlier, 19, mind you, a fencing mask. And this sword it had a different crossbar and knuckle guard. It was a mild steel originally. And he said, "And I will sell them to you, my good friend, for, what did he say? $120. Now, Mandy and I had plans, and they involved dinner. They involved going out to do a few other things after that event. And I looked at him and I said, "Benny, I would love to own that, but I won't insult you by bidding with what I have." And he he definitely he laughed and he said, "Just out of curiosity, insult me." And being me, I opened my wallet, battered old leather wallet, not unlike the one I carry today, and I showed him. I have exactly $80. And that is my dinner money. That is my, food for the next week money on campus. And he looked at me, he goes, "For you, $80. To buy a blade, just the Schlager," which this is an oval Schlager. It's one of the last ones. You can't find them. They switched to diamond Schlagers, and then they switched to what they call custom heavy rapier blades. But it still has a good look at that. It still has a C curve after all these years. Anyway, He sold it to me. And I said, how can you do that? And he said, you are a good man, and there are too few of you. If you get a chance, pass it on. And since then, since Mr. Gilberto Benitez was his real name, and I say was because I don't believe he's with us anymore. So, uh-oh. Is this thing starting to get an extra? No, it's just a right-handed sword. I fought it right-handed too much. Yes, no, that was part of his shtick. If you could imagine a fat Benny who talked exactly like Benny from The Mummy, and would give discounts to women who would let him take a picture pretending to swat their butts. He also sold high-quality leather goods. And then really high-quality leather goods, again, from out from under the table. He was the proper shady salesman. Anyway, since then, I decided at that moment that's who I want, part of who I wanted to be. I mean, shady vendor aside, although I am a vendor, I'm not terribly shady. I wanted to be able to do that. And since that moment, between that moment and when my old instructor gave me domain, as he put it, over the see what you can make out of these things. Sorry. And I decided that I would. I have looked at the purchase of gear different than anyone else. Much to my wife's eternal chagrin, I would spend our meager fortunes not on improving my own gear, but making sure that I had loaner gear, and that my loaner gear was usually better than my gear, and that they could use almost all my swords. The only sword I was incredibly passionate that they couldn't use was this one. But the balance was a little rough, and the overall weight was a little rough after I had one of my injuries. And Torvald Swakhammer of Swakhammer Metals, also known as John Miner, he is in the Freemasons too. He does stuff with them. He was bothered by that. Yes, he really did. He wore a bunch of, he had like the whole gaggle. You just have to imagine a fat Benny, a perverted fat Benny. Oh, I love that man. And he sold all sorts of like bud case specials and weapons. My buddy John, as he would say, I wouldn't waste spit on them because they'd rust out. But I got several of my blades from him, and I love that man dearly. God, I miss him. Anyway, John was offended by the balance, and he was offended by the fact that it was mild steel. I still have the original guard for this. So he brazed this beautiful, and now that it's getting some polish, I leave the old battered pommel on. One, because I do something that is not in any of the books. It's something I only teach my direct students, and you have to have the right equipment. I tend towards pommel parries, and I don't think that's even in the simple sword. A swordmaster has to keep one or two things to himself, at least, in preference for. Now, I have to let that sit, and I have to do this again once it's soaked up some of the junk. And I may have to, the inside could use a lot more. I want to shine. I'm not going to patina this. I want this cleaned up. So I guess I will be working on it quite a bit. Anyway, Whenever I look at a sword trainer, okay, I don't look at it in the number of acquiring one. I always review it from the perspective of I need to acquire 6 to 10. No, he was just, it's not that he wasn't perverted, it's that he was charming about his perversion. Does that make sense? And little buddy Benny, there we go. Yeah, I'm just not putting enough. Oh, it needed to soak in and get a second pass. I really need to change these. Well, I'm not going to be able to change these tips out anytime soon. God, I'm sorry. I'm homesick, if that makes sense. There was a time, I will admit, when I was young and I was dumb and I had what they call the dream in the SCA of trying to be, living the LARP aspects of that and believing in the innate chivalry of good men and things like that. Like I said, I was young and dumb. I was still jaded in real life, which is why I wanted to not be jaded. I wanted to not be who the world made me. Because I came to the sword not to get power. I had power plenty should I need it. I had proven that. I wanted to get control. I wanted to hone and harness and make sure by the time I was done that I would never again be what I was. Again, stories for another time. But John brazed and made this beautiful triple dunkle duster for me. And it's a little beat up over the years. It could honestly use a little adjustment. But this sword, more than any, is not just an extension of me when I fight. It's a representation, a physical manifestation of everything I believe in and everything I work toward. And yeah, it's old. And yeah, it's battered. And yeah, it comes with a slightly shady past. This is the sword of a scoundrel. And right now, it's loose. So the next time I work on this, I'm going to have to get the leather out and actually disassemble it. But I decided I would get this. And it changed my life. Now, how does this all apply? Yes, The Mummy, 1999, is one of the finest movies ever made. Now, I'm going to pause to answer Ruby's question. Ruby's question was that I like a spadroon as a weapon. Can I fight it like a using rapier and longsword techniques? A longsword will be a little trickier because it's guarded. The Rasso always breathes through and soaks into my skin a bit. Not the healthiest thing that happens. But the spadroon was expressly developed so that someone could take a saber or hold up against sabers, but use techniques that they would have learned fencing with foils. It was meant to be a generalist Swiss Army knife sort of sword. It didn't do anything as well individually as any of the swords of the period that you're likely to encounter, but it did all of them pretty well. So not only can you use a spadroon in that fashion, I encourage you to, because that's literally the point and the spirit of the weapon. Generalization, I believe, is one of the greatest ways to survive, both as a swordsman and as an individual. Versatility is key. So, I need to put a lot more polish on that blade. Anyway, I'm working my way up to where I'll have to cut some of the electrical tape off. I should take all electrical tape off, but I'm not going to do that till I have new electrical tape on hand to put on. Sorry. Probably switch it back to red. Anyway, now we're going to let this just sit. I'm trying to put a heavy coat, just kind of like you're waxing a car. And yes, car wax, auto wax works very, very good as a way to keep your blades protected. Wonderful stuff. If you get splops of this, like excess, and you miss it on the sword, you will need more. You will need more to polish it off. Normally, I would be using 3-in-1 oil to treat the leather right there because it soaks in. And that's why, if you look, that's actually been essentially oil hardened. Dunk, dunk, dunk. I believe it was a chunk of water hardened. That might have been a wax hardened, but it's also absorbed a tremendous amount of oil over the years. But I can't thank this weapon enough. I don't know. I don't know if this. I don't really. A couple spots that I might need to file because they look like light pitting at the end from somebody touching it. But I could file it, sand it gently, and probably take those right off. This is an old and beautiful blade. It does indeed have a bit of a distal taper, but oh, I love this sword. Anyway, this weapon is the weapon I carved my life out with. The simple sword was developed with this weapon in hand. Hundreds of students have learned opposite this weapon. This sword made me. And through it, I didn't just slay opponents. I slayed a lot of my own demons. I slayed a lot of my own problems. It has been a companion and a manifestation of dignity. Sorry, I didn't take a comment down. It is short for a Spanish sword, but I am short. And I tend to fight it. Well, if you read The Simple Sword, you know how I fight it. That it's mostly that with a few other techniques within. But at some point, this thing, for all it's just laying around with the rest of my junk while I'm moving stuff around, became sacred. There is magic in the sword. Not the magic that you throw in with spells and shenanigans, but the magic of faith and training, the magic of decades of resonance by a single user. So while this would be easily passed over by any aficionado and laughed and mocked by the people who, would go on and drop $300 or $400 on a sword, in a heartbeat because they could. We, as very poor college kids, held our own. Both Mandy and I. Now, see, now that it's been polished, the polish has been on there. Can you see how much shinier it is? Where I can now hit it with the dry part of the sock, and really I'm just pushing almost as hard as I can, and just buffing the living tar out of it. I'm getting pieces of a mirror finish. Anyway. If you want to learn to sword fight, if it is something you resonate with, I believe the sword will find you. The opportunities will find you. And there are always ways. But as I said, yes, I generated $80. That meant I didn't have any extra gas for a week. It meant I literally lived off of acquired cookies and leftovers and ramen on campus for a week. Actually, 2 weeks, to be honest. Don't tell Mandy. I'll get in trouble. But it was a matter of priority. Now, come down here, my old friend. I'm looking at the tip to make sure the tip is intact. And I need to hit the comment dump because I've missed quite a few. Yes. Okay. The only issue you may have are there are techniques that require quillions. Hold on. These guys. And a spadroon does not have quillions. They also have much less guard than this. So you can use Capofera, you can use McBro. You can use, with a spadroon, several Chinese techniques. Absolutely. I actually loaned Trelena my preferred Scottish fencing books because the Scottish tend to fight with basket hilt or back swords and back swords, basket hilt swords, which have they don't have quillions, but they have a whole lot more protection. Wonderful weapons. They're some of my favorites. Don't get me wrong. But that is covered pretty well in those manuals. And yes, George Silver. In fact, I think you will find George Silver fascinating because while he despises the rapier fighting, he is a bit of a purist. However, what he has done has taken a lot of the ancient styles, the things you find in 1.33 and God help us, Talhofer, and in his own distinct way, refined them, processed them, and genuinely improved them. I don't agree with everything he teaches. I mean, I don't agree with every sword master. Heck, sometimes I argue with myself in that, I might not use that in this technique, but you're going to have that. Now, that's coming along much better. The acquisition of training weapons. Over the years, I have trained people with PVC swords. I have trained people. The cheapest trainer I ever made that I bought materials for was a wood lath sword. and I made them for my son when he was young. I've made them for different students, and they actually can look quite attractive, but they're made out of wood lath, which is a very light, about quarter inch by about 2 inches, maybe a little less. Couldn't I use the circular guard? Somewhat. You can use a circular guard somewhat. They will bind. They just won't bind as well. However, if you are fighting with a circular guard, okay, you know what? Hold on. I can. Parry dagger. Parry dagger needs love. Parry dagger shall receive love. Anyway, this is a bind. This is why we have quillions. If you can catch a weapon, flick it there, you can control the weapon. You can possibly even disarm your opponent. Now, obviously, it's easier with the longer sword. But as you can see, it catches. Ooh. It is very hard to get a bind just by a round guard. You can get deflections. So when you have no quillions, you're going to be in a much more oftentimes it's not much more concussive. Although with the spadroon, you want a concussive. You want a neutral stance because it's a neutral weapon. I actually fight kind of spadroon-esque. You can deflect, and all the blade work deflections still work. But you can't, but you really can't bind. Does that make sense? And I have, they're not here, but I do have weapons that fit that bill. I'm going to let that sit, and then I'm going to come back over it again as the stuff. It kind of fogs. It's really odd. It kind of fogs like, again, like wax. But you won't have the kind of control, and you won't have the kind of fail-safe that you have with quillions. It's a little strange, I admit, but it works. Now, getting back to what Mike said, when you're in a group, I was in the SCA at the time. A lot of my standards are built around old SCA standards. Oh, this poor guy got rusty. Well, I mean, considering what these guys endured, I can't really complain. They had standards, but their standards were on the blades. And if I could acquire the right tools and the right parts, I could much, much cheaper make my own riggings. And if I could acquire the skills, and I was in the process of acquiring some of them, I still need to work on brazing as a skill. But that's going to be something I look into around the time I learn welding, because I'm going to learn welding as well. Anyway, I could do it much, much cheaper. And it was literally the only way I could afford it. So what I would do is I would order bare blades, and then I would make riggings for them. And I would help, make riggings for other people. Now, my riggings came from things like metal bowls that I found at Goodwill, candle holders. I need to find, where's my thin sword? I know. Aha! I can give you an example. I have another weapon to polish in just a moment. But, yeah, see, this guy has there's an S-curve here. And this is a railroad spike, so I prefer not to fight with it anyway. I have to go downstairs and see how my wide blade dagger is, see what kind of shape it's in. It's a beautiful thing. John made me the rigging for that, too. I really hope he can, when he retires, he can get more into Swakhammer metals because I want to promote him more. But he usually has more money than I would worry about. Now, this has had a lot of rust on it, so there's some discolorations. The cure for that would be sanding and probably gun bluing. I should take the whole thing apart and fix it. But this handle, for example, came off of a pot that I purchased for 50 cents at Goodwill, back when they sold things for 50 cents. They sometimes do now, but the prices are a little higher. This is an actual pommel, but it was like $3. It was cheaper to get the pommel at the time than it was to try to make my own. However, I have made my own, and I can show you. I can show you a sword that I rigged top to bottom with a fruit punch bowl. So yeah, you can't, like I said, candle holders. Here we go. My Elven thin blade. Now, this was not made for SCA use. This was actually made as a bit of an FU to several people. I was going to an event that was very frowning on you can't bring live steel in. And they tried to ding me for having an eating knife. Anyway, oh wow, this old blade really needs some love. If only I were equipped. But this is the rigging for my Elven thin blade. Dusty. The base is from a Christmas candle holder. Now, of course, in the SCA, I could never use something like this because this is lots of little sharp points. But on my hip, I can wear this basically anywhere. I mean, that you can carry a sword-like object and not get shot. Has the blade worked loose a little bit? No, it just settled. I forgot. It did settle in at a slight off angle from where I wanted it, but it's flat when I hold it. This is actually a piece of just standard dowel rod. Now, I need to bring these things closer to you. I'm sorry. And this is a brass pole. It's going to be much prettier in a few moments. That I got from Menards. And what it was not threaded to fit a standard fencing blade, which I want to say offhand is metric 1x6, which means for every 1 centimeter, there are 6 threads, if I remember right. It's been a long time. Well, binds happen, and if you can control the weapon, especially if you learn to fight with another weapon or a defensive object, can get real offensive real fast in the real world. So a parrying dagger, a buckler, you can completely Captain America and knock out their teeth with. So don't fear the bind, train the bind. But if you have that, you wouldn't have to worry about binds. Anyway, the point of balance is so perfect on this for the way I want a sword to be balanced that it is actually in between these two blades. I can't get my finger at the point of balance, which means it is light, it is nimble. I can write my name in cursive in this with tip cuts because I wanted it to feel right. I love this sword. I never get to fight with it, obviously, but this was sort of my masterclass on my methods for making low-cost gear. Now, where are we going with this? if you are going to be serious about training students, you will either have to acquire enough gear as a sale. I need to fix something while I'm here. I'm going to have to file this or sand it. Anyway, my anvil has surface rust, and I detest that. Oops, there goes some junk. But I put way too much on here. That's funny. But it's breaking up the rust, so that's okay. We'll let that do its thing. Oh no, I have more. Whatever shall I do? You need to decide, do you want fancy toys for yourself? Are you that person? Which you can be. You can be that person. Or do you want to be crossbody? Crossbody draw? Oh, absolutely crossbody draw. I'm not, especially if I am wearing two swords, crossbody both ways. I know the Japanese technique and the Chinese, some of the Chinese, but I know that definitely the Japanese are to wear the same side because the dagger is for shorter range, but if you're right hand, they want you to pull right hand sword, which makes sense. However, I and everyone I work with am ambidextrous, and I am ambidextrous because I have insisted on working to be so. Optimally, the answer is always more. What do I want? More. So I used to hit the field with either two swords, one long and one short, being this rapier and a saber rig I made myself that I'm quite fond of on a 30-inch rapier blade, and a parry dagger, that parry dagger actually, on a frog at the small of my back so I could draw it equally fast from either side. It really becomes a matter of wearer preference, and I think you need to, that's when you just have to play with. A lot of these don't get caught up in what's the best, because the real truth is, what's the best for you? I don't believe, and it's why I can't do katas. Okay, it's why I don't teach in the kata style. I'm left-handed, so wearing a sword on my right feels weird, practicing drawing from my left side. Drawing a sword, so left side, that would really tangle unless you're using a reverse grip. So that's one, unfortunately, you're asking a question I would have to see you physically demonstrate it to be able to fully address, but I would find a right hand draw much better, a crossbody draw. For example, I prefer to shoot when I am using projectile devices. We'll say Nerf blasters. For the purpose of YouTube, I prefer to shoot Nerf blasters left-hand dominant. I'm left-eye dominant most of the time, and I have less damage to my left wrist and arm than I do to my right wrist and arm. So I prefer to use devices. Yeah, I could never fight somebody with this. There's so much ancient pitting on this blade. But left-handed. Now, a lot of people like the left pistol draw, but I find the the quick draw, it's not comfortable for me. I'm crossbody. So I prefer to have a rig that looks more like, if you've ever seen Doc Holliday's chosen pistol rig. I know you haven't watched a lot of movies, but if you look up the film Tombstone, Doc Holliday's Doc Holliday's holsters. He had a cross, France Lames, wow. A crossbody rig that was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And as I am something of a wheel gun nerfer, so hold on. I'm sorry, I have to work around the YouTube algorithmic laws, and boy, does this needs polishing. I won't say negligent, but a little absent talking to these fellas. They feel more like me than I have in a long time, though. Really need to get some 3-in-1 oil involved to feel like me. Anyway, so this is a Nerf blaster, YouTube. Nerf blaster. I got it for $2.99 at Goodwill. I could hang it low on my hip, pull, and go. But it's not comfortable because, amongst other things, I have hip damage. I have nerve damage on my thighs and hips that cause numbness, pain, and paralysis. Hence the reason I take some very hefty medication. And the other, it is much more natural for me to do a cross draw. Now, you could actually have a stacked cross draw with a blaster. I feel the same way about swords. I also tend to favor shorter swords, as well as things. I agree with a bit with silver, but that's because a lot of sword fights are actually in their function and application quick draw contests. That's why we train first position. First position is uncomfortable. First guard is uncomfortable. So, let me just see if I've done any good. Oh, let's not get that on my cell phone. Let's see if I've done any good on the top of this. Oh, I've actually done some good getting some of that surface rust off. I've at least sealed it. Hey, look at that. See how nice that's coming out? Versus how it was? Anyway, sorry, my ADHD is running amok today. I would say you have to try things. You have to always find your fight. If somehow you can pull off a left-handed draw, perhaps cross back, that's fine. But I like the shorters because I can get that out faster. I can do first position. And the thing about first is top first, one, because it's most uncomfortable. And two, you can cut into it in a narrow space. Remember, each of the guards that I teach, all 8, and of course the 9th guard of intimidation, when you get your Destreza on, can be cut into or thrusted out of. But that's coming quite nice now. I love Brasso. And I'm gonna have to come up and get all the things that I do up on there, but that's okay. Brasso bleaches stuff, so you have to be careful. But the best thing you can do is get an approximate frog or a very simple device to hold a sword trainer. You can use hammer loops, work surprisingly well, at least for a start. They also work really good for hanging hammers or axes if that's your jam. Sometimes, dagger trainers. And find where is comfortable on your body. for you. I have a shorter reach than a lot of people. So instead of the temptation of doubling down, well, you just need a longer and longer sword. Well, the big guys have longer and longer swords. It doesn't work with me. I need a sword that moves comfortably with me, that I can draw a lot. And this is one thing that cheeses my soul, because getting scabbards is a little tricky these days for some reason. They don't want to make scabbards for training swords. People don't train from the draw. I like to make PVC scabbards, so I have to train from the draw, because you're going to. If you're treating it like it's an actual style, you need to learn the whole style. And for me, after many, many years, so that might be something I put in to the Simple Swords updated edition, the special edition, that I want to do for its 10th anniversary next year. Yeah, 10 years of the Simple Sword. I will be throwing some extra content like that in, probably photos. There's a new version coming. I may only make that hard copy. I'm not sure. I mean, hardcover. Not sure yet. I'm very hesitant to tinker with the Simple Swords file. It took a lot of work to get that. But I don't say this is how you do it beyond learning the basic steps. So to run musical parallels, I teach you the scales. So think of the basic footwork and the basic blade work and the basic assessment, the mental work, the brain work maybe, as the scales of playing the sword. High, medium, low, two, do, a deer, a female deer. Anyway, and I'll show you a few musical phrases. Tink, tink, tink. But if you want to learn songs, you need to write your own. Or you need to read that of others, because I can't force you to fight like me. Because in part, I am physically different from humans. In that, in human standard, I have one limb shorter than the other. My ankles are bent. My back is bent at an angle that is different than the vast majority of healthy people. My hands operate differently. So there are a lot of adaptations that I have made to my style personally that I can't teach you, because they would not help you unless you have the exact problems I have and the exact background. So my footwork will always be a little infested with the Tai Chi I picked up way back in the day, and some of the Hapkido stuff I picked up from John, and a few other things. Let's see. Yes! Okay, I love this. Kitty says, to make a different analogy, it's like dance. He can only teach you the steps, but it's up to you to put them together in a dance. Okay. Dance. Have you seen those kind of awesome videos where they take a dance club, like not club, but like people who take dance lessons, and then they pair them up randomly and they play a random song, and they have to work together to make the dance work right, but it's not choreographed ahead of time? That's how fighting is on a certain level. It requires very much the same kind of constant analysis of range, of intent. Especially in a one-on-one, there is very much the sense of who is leading and who is following. And contrary to a lot of people, I do not believe that leading is necessary for success. It can be. At some point, you have to respond. But you can respond from establishing a comfortable position first. Now, if you're naturally aggressive, cool, we'll harness that. If you're naturally neutral, cool, you bounce around. If you're naturally defensive, I'm naturally defensive, Trelena is naturally defensive. I encourage natural defensive approach because I never want you to be in a situation where you're doing a self-defense situation and you're using the techniques I have imparted. I don't want those to ever be training scars that make you needlessly bold. There are very few times when heroism is required. The vast majority of time, survival is your goal. What you fight going in to what you fight going out. Does that make sense to you? So you have to know how you're going to move. You have to know what feels right to you. Ruby says, Joy has done similar things in her classes, pairing random people together and having them. Yes. And honestly, when you are sparring, that's how it feels. And I have to phrase this carefully to not misrepresent. But when I am sparring with Trelena, we have sparred together so long we are literally old dance partners. And we take cues from each other. And on the field, there is no one I am more... I have to use the word intimate. And it's not pervy and it's not romantic, but it is very intimate with to fight with. And especially if we're 2-on-2, we're one unit. When it's the two of us, it's something truly special. And I hope everyone who spars can find that with either their dear friends or their lovers or their companions at arms, and develop that. After a while, exactly. I just have to be careful. Thesis says intimate has many different meanings. It's not always sexual. Exactly. And explaining that because the subtleties of reading each other from fighting with each other and knowing each other's weaknesses. I am a bit more aggressive than Trelena is because I favor sword and dagger. She favors sword and buckler. So that means she can cover a center line because oftentimes I will fight left-handed, where my sword, if I'm fighting with Trey, I will often fight left-handed sword, right-hand dagger, because that closes the door between us, and I can put her to my right. Or we can opposite, but it's something, again, for me, it is the part of where the arts feel sacred. I don't want to be one of those woo-woo mystic sounding crap, because it's not. But to me personally, I do not believe, actually I know without a doubt, I would not be alive were it not for my sword training. Everything as an adult that is good to me either came from my family or it came from the sword. And everything I did myself required the sword. The sword quiets. It's one of the few times the static in my mind goes away. It's one of the few times my body isn't fighting me, because I have rather advanced neurological issues. And because I have trained so much, so long, so consistently, my body knows what to do, and it ignores the static. I rarely spasm when it's time to drill. I rarely spasm when I'm sparring. Unlike my day to day. My day to day, even with the rather impressive cocktail of meds that I have to take, the sword allows me to focus my will. It allows me to think clearer than any other time. And in that focus, it silences the unnecessary pains to track. It silences the unnecessary concerns and burdens that I carry. Because when I am behind the sword, that's one of the few times where I'm only doing one thing. Now, from that thing, I may be multitasking. I'm tracking different people. I'm watching my surroundings and my opponent. I may be assessing them. But for me, I literally carved my life out with a training sword. Who I am and what I am in my soul exists behind that sword. And what I love about it is instead of becoming the monster that I was on a path to be, and I could have been, learning to fight the way I do, carved that form, and it let me remove a lot. It put me in a position in many ways to fight my way back from a level of darkness I choose not to share. I don't wish to speak on, because I have found if I tell certain stories, some of my younger or my more naive individuals will take the wrong lesson, and they will glorify and resonate with things that should not be glorified or resonated with. So I have to be better than I am. And the sword is a true thing. The sword doesn't lie. The wielder lies. Trust me, I've gotten second in enough tourneys where apparently my sword, my blade bending didn't count as a kill. Sure, but it is what it is. And the fact that I've been able to carve that out with a training sword and use the sword to heal, to empower, to defend. To be a light in the dark. I know it sounds cliche, and I know it sounds cringy to some, because to some, what I'm saying sounds contradictory. This is a style a type of violence, a type of violence that could be used to do deadly and lasting harm. And that's what a sword is. A sword can be all these things. But a sword can also be used to deflect. A sword can also be used to redirect. A sword can be used to defend. There is much more deterrence and defense in a sword than, say, a firearm. Now, I am versed in the application of firearms as a tool. I can still enjoy Nerf and have fun with it, but I am versed in the as firearms. And what you cannot do is block with a firearm. It can only deter or destroy. That's it. So I have hope for a world where defense still exists. It's why when I see people use the arts, they use the martial arts of any sort for their own glorification. When I see it used to belittle others and put them beneath you, or to acquire others as chattel or as conquests. It does not merely bother me. It does not merely offend me. It feels on a level to me like heresy. It feels sick and perverse and vile. Because for me, the art of training the sword at a level from, and this isn't me. This isn't in my teachings. This is not Brother Love's Travel and Sword Show here. This is me kind of opening my heart and soul out to bear online. For me, it's the opportunity to have another way out. I used to joke that with the sword I can punch a ghost. And in many ways, the blunted steel functions as an amplification and direction of my soul, of my spirit, of my intention. I don't talk about this kind of thing often because this is one of the rare times I'm talking about me. And yes, I think Thesis says something. Yeah, Thesis says it's just as meditative as anything else. You don't have to think. For me, the sword is the flow. I can find what I consider the groove. And again, this isn't mojo. It's just mentality and thought. And I look at where I started and what I've used to train people. Dowel rods. Many dowel rods. A lot of dowel rod swords. My buddy Lito started with, he and I, with wooden dowel rod swords. the ugliest handguards anyone's ever made. Oh my God, those swords are ugly. I think they're still out in the garage. I've trained with Rawlings. I've trained with Rawlings synthetic swords. I've trained with Penties and black fencers that I've borrowed, and Cold Steel and Zen Warrior and France Lames, Hanwei. And many of them I don't have anymore because they were weapons that were not mine. I acquired them and I built them, and they weren't built for me. It's a different mentality. And I don't expect everyone to have it. But I am old-fashioned enough and perhaps a lunatic, perhaps very, very foolish, perhaps deluded. But I have this crazy idea that one person with one goal and the drive and the dedication, if you want something, you will get it. You'll find a way. If you're too poor to get something that truly matters, you will save. It may take you years. It may take you decades. That crank forge that I just got, I've been after one for 20 years. Universe always fell out. Since I've got it, the wind hasn't stopped blowing. It's been too windy to safely fire it up. I find that a little funny. I don't know if you do, but I do. I find it funny. But you have to prioritize it. It's the same thing with the Nerf blasters. Ironically, I have a great many Nerf blasters. The vast majority of them aren't mine. No, I'm just acquiring and holding to pass on to the right people. And if I took the money I spent on the Nerf blasters and spent them on a few for me, I could have top of the line anything I want. But it's not about me. It's about making sure that in the right circumstance, it gets to the right hands. So, the training equipment. I have to keep some of it so that I can train the next set of people. But every once in a while, it'll be either I'll help somebody make a custom trainer, or I'll just buy it. I will find a deal and I'll pass it on. Because it's not mine anyway. They need it. With the hope that maybe some of the lesson, maybe some of the mentality that I share goes with it. And you know what? The vast majority of time, it does. The vast majority of time, if I work with somebody long enough and they pick up on my philosophy as well as my techniques, I hear tell that they're working with someone else to help make them better. I have, as a swordsman, as a sword master, no prouder achievement than the people who I have the privilege of catching glimpses of passing it along. That's because I believe the work is more important than the worker in this case. And now that I've been at it for a quarter of a century or so, teaching people and fighting and going between a dozen different groups, maybe more. I don't know. I've spoken at libraries and done demos at parks and for clubs, Boy Scouts and combat veterans. Seeing someone learn to sword fight and from that start to grow the confidence to get better, to fight what they're actually fighting, what they're actually worried about. Maybe it's addiction, maybe it's situation at home, maybe it's an abusive spouse, maybe it's the demons of a war, maybe it's the demons of growing up. As they get more powerful, as they build up, they get better. And from that, getting better, I get to see them no longer need me. I get to see them reach a level where they can move on to more advanced in their chosen styles. That's what I used to do in the SCA. I was just a footstool. That's all I am. I am a footstool towards another world. Standing out in the field doing this. And if people are polite, barest, show the barest form of kindness, put everything I have to boosting you up as far as I can. A lot of people choose to step on my face anyway, and they don't usually get as far. But that's okay too. There's a story in that. It's going to be a children's story, actually. Very few people have read it, but there's a story there. But I will say this. Though the sword has been the target, the destination, I have fought through debilitating injury and illness and condition and loss of home, loss of jobs, loss of hope. I've had a couple erstwhile companions, chief among them being my wife. But philosophically, it has been, I want to get back to holding my sword, to wielding my sword and teaching others. It's why I don't suffer dilettantes well. I don't suffer the arrogant and the powerful, the strong, who use their skills to dominate over people or control them, especially with gate-kept knowledge. It truly does sicken me to my very core. And why I delight in the people who build others up. Because I have spent 25 years, ironically, it's a bit of a spider shaping an incredibly elaborate web of connections, of people, of ideas. Not to entrap or ensnare, but to elevate. And the neat thing about it is, for all its intricate nature. Sorry, my speech impediment got a hold of that word, the variant of that word, and wasn't going to let go. I have deliberately and consistently built it with intentional obsolescence of requiring me in the individuals and intentional obsolescence of requiring me in the organization. That's why this is the Historical Fencing Guild. This isn't the white boot style of defense. This isn't, well, the old ghosts school. This isn't the Nicholas Talker technique. Super tactical extreme. Sorry, that's an old joke. This is the Historical Fencing Guild. We study the history and we fight. But we provide resources, information, and elevation for our members. And the only requirements for membership are presence and courtesy. I'd like to throw effort in there, but presence and courtesy are really what matter. Courtesy to yourself, courtesy to each other, courtesy to me. Heck, courtesy to the material. Because right now, that's what the world needs. I can't thank these people enough. My patrons. Thesis is in them. Thesis is here. I can't thank Joe Bachman enough. I can't. And I can't thank Trelena enough. I think in absence of Trelena Bachman especially, I may have lost faith in the vast majority of humanity as a whole. A man has honor when he holds to his ideals, even though it is unpopular, unprofitable, or dangerous to do so. And that's slightly paraphrasing Walt Lippmann, who said that. It's something I try to hold to. Trelena Bachman is probably the most honorable person I have ever met who doesn't share my last name. And Joe's right up there with her. See, the difference between me, at the end of the day, and what I teach, and what I do, and what I have done, is for a lot of people in a lot of groups, they take the praise and the elevation as real, and they disregard the philosophical base. Now, Mandy would be very mad if she heard what I'm about to say, but she's not watching, so I can't. At the end of the day, I can be described as a short, fat, furry little man who more often than not gimps along with a stick. But I still believe in goodness. I still believe in honor, in the idea that those who have a strength of any sort should use it to help those who are weaker than them, be it physical strength or mental strength or experience or wealth, whatever. those who have more should help those who have less. We live in a world where that is not exactly the gospel that is taught. That is not exactly the philosophy. We live in a world where sometimes it feels like the only ones who are winning are those who are chasing greed and excess, and cruelty, and self aggrandizement. But there are other ways that are better for everybody. And they're steeped in the idea of love and kindness. And I don't hold to these ideals solely because they are in line with my faith. I hold to these ideals because they are right. Because it builds everyone up. And because I dream of a world. I dream of a world where my skill set, nearly my complete skill set, is so obsolete as to be foreign. I dream of a world where the weak never need to learn to recover from what the strong has done to them. I dream of a world where a woman never needs to be fearful of a man, especially that claims to love them. I dream of a world where no one is afraid to go out after dark. And I can't do that. I have the power. I have the means. But when things are dark, I have found that even the smallest light can do some good. And I am a very small light. And it takes more than you'll ever know to keep it burning. I don't know how long I'll be doing it. I don't know how far it reaches. I don't know. I never really know if it's doing any true good. I get ideas. I get to see things once in a while. But it's also not my job to know. It's my job to be the guy who has an option for the people that otherwise wouldn't have access. To be the guy who says, here, how do you want to move? How do you need to move? What can we do with what you got? And making do with what you have and being grateful for it is vital. I had a student. I say had, not that they left my service, but that they left this world. And their name was Kitsune Windsor. And their training sword was an extendable antenna because that's all the weight they could handle. But they did their drills best they could while stuck in the dang wheelchair every day. And they tell me about it. I did my drills. Are you proud of me? Yeah, I'm proud of you. If ever there was someone who deserved, should they be interested, to go to Valhalla, it would be them. I mean it, guys, when I ask you to be good. I mean it when I say, be kind to yourself and each other. Because that's what the world needs. And as scary as things are, as powerless as we may feel sometimes, and Lord knows we feel powerless sometimes, we each can do that. We each can try to be kind. I'm not even asking nice. Lord knows I'm not nice. I'm a mean old man. I'm surly. I'm grumpy. And I can be. Don't mistake that. But I try to be kind whenever possible. And I try to apologize when I have failed to do so. I think if we can try to do that, it's a great way to keep the swords up. So, let's look at this. It's still wobbly. It's not ready yet, much like me. It's not perfect. It still bears the marks and dings of over a quarter century of being the line between me and those who would do me injury, both mortal and metaphysical. And I'm going to fix it and replace parts on it. But it will still be the same blade because the spirit of the blade is there. And as imperfect and perhaps unattractive to a great many compared to a great many things, I don't think there's a single blade in the world I love more. Find your sword. It might not even be a sword. It might be a pen. It might be a musical instrument. It might be a flashlight. It might be a garden. But whatever it is you wield to spread a little light in this world, a little goodness, do it. When you're doing it, guys, train with it. Because basics are mastery. The great secret of every master, no matter the art, no matter the technique, no matter the genre, is repetition and understanding and full comprehension and pursuit of the impossible perfection of the basics. That's it. The great secret to all things, including being great and being an instructor, being the best. The secret is that life is simple. It just ain't easy. And we make things much more complicated and difficult, and we get lost in the pursuit of the easy. So if you can't afford the gear you want, then you simply decide to make the do with what you have, improvise what you can, and put a little away, and understand it will take how long it takes. Because you'll have to look at, is this worth delaying this? Will this help me more now than something else down the road? And you can do it. Because what you're doing is being kind to yourself. You're not being nice to yourself, you're being kind. You're walking that path. And I know everyone watching this can. I'm proud of y'all. I don't tell you it enough, but I am. I'm eternally grateful to you, my viewers. I'm grateful to the people in the comments who've listened to me rattle and prattle. And I'm grateful to the people who have let me be in a position that, despite any number of difficult things, I can still, once a week, sit here and talk swords and shenanigans with y'all. So, guys, keep your guard up. Do your drills. Be kind to yourself and each other. And as always, thank you for supporting your local sword master. I haven't got comments in quite a while, but I still have 7 viewers, so someone has been watching and listening. I will be back. I'll be back Monday on the other channel, the Nicholas Talker channel on YouTube, for Nevermind the Furthermore. My 3 times a week creative, motivational, vaudevillian show. I'll be back here next week at 8 o'clock Eastern for another episode of Nevermind the Furthermore. Another episode of the Historical Fencing Guild Livestream. And I'll answer your questions best I can. We may do some more repairs. I may bring out some of my defensive devices like shields and bucklers to talk about. We'll see if I have room in the ever-shifting chaos behind me. But it will get better, provided that you work towards it, and you do so with kindness and truth and determination to make it so. Whatever happens on the big scale, it's beyond my control. Whatever happens on the religious and spiritual and metaphysical scales, beyond my control. All I can do is make sure I put a sword in my hand every day as part of my service. Because I'm not just training to keep my body working, even though it really doesn't want to. I'm not doing the silly drills every day because I have some dream of championships or awards or notoriety. I do my drills every day so that what's left of me tomorrow might just be enough But if somebody wants to start the path, I can be there to build them up one more step. I will never aspire to be a king or a lord among men, or a hero, or even terribly well known. But I do humbly seek, as I always have, much to the chagrin of many, to be a footstool so that the people who couldn't reach have a shot. And I suspect I'm not the only one. So to all my footstools out there, ladders in some of your cases, to all the people who are reaching for the pinnacle of everything and all the people trying to just build the bottom up one more notch, I bid you all a very good night, and I will see you all soon. Toodles.